Hello, everyone. This is Chala, CEO and founder of The Repositioning Expert, coming to you live with Tuesday Tea Time with Chala. And it is a Tuesday. Yesterday was the Canadian Thanksgiving. Thanks to my friend Maria, who had us over. We ate and ate and ate. Usually what happens during the holidays, really, isn't it? And so I'm back to drinking my trusty protein on Tuesday Tea Time. The weather has taken a turn in Toronto for the chilly. I'm headed to Houston tomorrow, so I'm hoping that it's going to warm up. But whenever you do presentations whenever I do presentations in venues that are conferences and trade show floors, they're super, super cold. So usually I just bring my winter stuff, and it works out. It all works out. So what are we going to talk about today? One of my favorite topics, stalking. I love it because everybody always wonders, Chala, when is it appropriate to follow up? How many times is it appropriate to follow up? How do I follow up? What do I do? Follow up is this huge thing that everybody dreads. Nobody wants to do. A lot of people don't even have a plan to do it. They don't know how to do it. And then there are those who do it too much. And that's when it turns into stalking. Part of my job is talking to a lot of corporate buyers. I used to be a corporate buyer and I used to get stalked. So I'm going to give you some tips and tricks on how to never, ever look like a stalker, how to, always be welcome and in demand, and then how to turn the follow-up into actual sales. So I'll start off with the stats around follow-up are just horrible, right? This is a little bit warm for me, hot. Okay, so you miss out on 90% of the sales that you don't follow up on. That is an actual statistic. So when do you know when it's stalking versus when it creeps into stalking versus when it's a follow-up? 60% of customers say no four times, not just once, 4 times before buying. So you have to keep trying, right? So you know that you have to keep trying. Now, when is it considered stalking? And I'm going to tell you what I know from having been a purchaser of businesses for really, really sexy brands like Pepsi, Pizza Hut, Frito-Lay for 20 years and being stalked. And then I've been in the last 12 years talking to as many buyers of corporations as sponsor me, that I work with, that I meet at these procurement conferences. And I specifically ask them about this follow-up question. And I love to tell you what they're saying. So the number one thing that is considered stalking is too frequent follow-up. So what is too frequent? One, if they ask you by a certain timeline to follow up, you have to follow up by that certain timeline, because there's an actual statistic around how many, 42% of buyers say they would have bought if the vendor kept their promise to call on the time that they required. So when is it appropriate to call back is when they're telling you to call back. So that's number one. So when you're in a conversation with them and you ask them, when would it be appropriate for me to follow up with you? Listen to them and do what they're saying. Don't do it too soon. Don't do it too far back. Put it in your calendar or your, sales automation, whatever it is. You have to follow up when they say to follow up. Now, if you didn't actually get to ask them, you leave it up to what I call natural timing, which is natural timing is if you work with me, you actually have an actual marketing plan. If you work with me, you'll have a marketing plan. You need to be in front of them 7 to 12 times in, a buying cycle. So you need to hit them, that you need to have visibility around their world 7 to 12 times. So when we do for clients a marketing plan, we call it their sun. So where are they actually networking? Where do they what associations, organizations do they go to? What events and meetings are they attending? Where are they speaking? Where are they meeting? So you have to actually be at those places naturally where, for example, where my target is gathering. I'm going to be flying to Houston tomorrow, and I'll be going to a conference and I'll be speaking there. So I'm actually going to be seeing some prospects that I've met before. So it's a natural follow up for me to ask them, where have you gotten with your business? How is your growth? Have you considered working with me again? What is happening in your business? What is the new things that we can work on? So that's what I want you to to think of. Too frequent is your timeline. You need to get on their timeline, and you need to intercept them naturally where they're already living and breathing and listening, and where their ears and eyes are. If they're listening to podcasts, get on the podcast so that they remember having a conversation with you. And then you could even follow up with them and say, hey, did you hear my podcast? Hey, it was broadcast to your actual segment target. Did you actually see me talk about this problem topic that you and I have talked about? You even send them the segment to be able to follow up with them. So that's the other thing that I'm going to talk about. So the frequency is the number one. Let them lead the frequency. If you haven't been smart enough to ask them when you should, or they wouldn't give you an answer, then you go to their world and have natural, frequent interactions with them in their world. Now, having failed all of that, if none of that is possible, I say try it on a 2-week basis. Just try every 2 weeks, but there's a very specific way that you're supposed to do it. So you're not just calling and saying, hey, I'm still here, can you still work with me? So when is it stalking? We were talking about the timing. So the frequency, the sequence, and the frequency is as I told you to do. Now, the second part is, please stop giving the same selfish message as, this is who we are, can you work with us? So keep saying the same thing is insanity, right? So instead, there's no what's in it for them. Your message needs to be based on a solution to a problem that you know that they have that you can help them with. So you have to give them some sort of value add at every touch point. So let's say you're seeing them at a conference, or you're going to call them in 2 weeks because you never even asked them, when should I call you and follow up? You're actually going to share something, an article, a resource, a paper, like a white paper, a trends report, a tip sheet, a video, something along the lines of what you and they talked about in terms of a solution to a problem that you know they're looking to you to hire you for. So not only is the cadence of your follow-up important, but the content of your follow-up is also important. So make sure that you have a full plan where you have a cadence of what to follow up with. So you have a whole bunch of pipeline worth of content, and it could be visual, it could be video, it could be audio, it could be, as I said, written, it could be quizzes, it could be anything at all. It could be just news. But it has to be about them and their problem, and not about you, because there's nothing more annoying than a supplier who keeps saying, hey, just checking in, how are you? Are you ready to hire us yet? I mean, maybe you're not saying that right off, but that's exactly what the message is. If there is no excuse to add value to them at every point where you're talking to them. Okay. The third point that I wanted, so it's the timing, the message, and the third point that I wanted to make is, are you reaching out to them to follow up in the same way? Don't. Use different methods. So one is email, another could be phone, another could be social media, another could be an actual event that you go to, another could be a co-sponsored event that you invite them to, or that you another vendor that they use that you actually collaborated with invites them to. So think of many, many, many ways of hitting them from different angles at this, not all at the same time, obviously, in that cadence, but you have to actually literally map it out so that you can do this in a strategic, structured, systematic way that's going to make them think like, wow, this guy is thinking about us, this woman is thinking about us, these guys are on the ball, they have the sequence down, they're actually giving us information and value added content that we can actually use in our business, and they're adding value, so I'm going to add value to them and call them in for a meeting. Okay. Now, the last thing that I want to say is, if it's with the same person and you're not getting anywhere, I would try different people. So it really, really behooves you to get to know, because now increasingly purchasing is done by committees. So there's not just one person who's the contact person that you've always had that you could potentially try to influence, but you could find out who are the people in those those industries, in the roles that purchase for what you do, and try to connect with them on the many levels that I told you. One, if you've met them in the past, you can try to reach out to them directly. Two, you can go and become part of their world by focusing on one industry that they play in and being there over and over again, even as a featured guest, as a host, as a sponsor, some form and format and fashion. You need to be in their world so that you connect with these buyers. A lot of people say that buyers never venture outside of the office. Entirely possible. So then you have to look at what are the industry events that they absolutely have to be at, or who are the vendors that are actually getting in the door with them that you could collaborate with to get you in the door with them, or to name drop, or to pass something along of added value. So this is a multi-pronged approach, and it is a lot of work. I mean, when we do account-based marketing, which is like trying to land big whales, we have a whole year's worth of activities and action plans to be able to hit one after the other of these different value-added touch points. If you're just trying to do follow-up, try to come up with a list of things. And if you're working with me, or if you're working strategically, you will already have an industry focus. So this is not going to be recreating the wheel for every company that you need to follow up with in that industry segment. They're going to have the same pain. You're going to have the same solutions. You're going to have the same value-added tip sheets and white papers and videos and whiteboard videos, whatever it is that you're going to have to give to them, you need to incorporate into your follow-up through different people. So it's the timing, the people, or the timing, the circumstance of how you deliver the value add, and then the content, and whether it's the same person or not. So try to make it not the same person. So nothing new. It's stalking. Here's when it's considered stalking. Let me take a sip. It's definitely stalking and not follow up. If you have nothing new to say, nothing different to offer, no value add to them. If you are not talking about anything about them, but it's always about you, and you're just existing and taking up the buyer's time just by intercepting them with nothing to add and nothing to say. So have a follow-up strategy. You can add email, automation, AI to that follow-up strategy, but don't just love them and leave them and never stalk. So instead, do the things that I talked about. Repetition is okay, but how and when is what you have to consider. So 44% of sales reps quit follow-up after the first conversation, but it takes up to 10 times contact before buy. It's between 7 to 12 in some of the stats that I've seen. Talk to you about the cadence, talk to you about through different medium, and then be everywhere they are in their industry and send the different value add info. It could be physical door openers. Like sometimes we send, like one of my clients, we're thinking about sending a diaper, and she does elder care to EAPs, for example, or to corporate managers. We're thinking about what is the solution, what is the pain, what's going to be, what kind of information is going to be included with that diaper. This is like an adult diaper. And this is just one example of some of the things that you need to be sending them as follow-up. Okay, so I hope that was helpful. I'll bring you back more stories from Houston this week, and I will see you next week. All the best. Take care.